Hello.
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 Hi there.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of the RadioTimes.com podcast. I'm Ben Allen, on-demand writer, and I'm here to share my interview with director David Leitch, the man behind John Wick, Atomic Blonde, Deadpool 2, and most recently, Fast and Furious spin-off Hobbs and Shaw. Leitch started his career as a stuntman on TV shows like Seventh Heaven and Buffy the Vampire Slayer before working his way up the ladder to become a major film director. I spoke to David a couple of weeks ago ahead of the release of the film to break down some of the biggest and best action sequences in his movies, including the brilliant hotel scene in John Wick and the massive final battle in Deadpool 2, which sees two massive CGI beasts, Juggernaut and Colossus, face off. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by David Leitch, the director of Hobbs and Shaw. David, how are you?
I'm good.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So first of all, David, I wanted to ask you how you went from, you started your career as a stuntman, I believe. So you went from doing stunts on one of my favourite shows ever, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh yeah.
To directing a movie with The Rock.
Yes.
Tell me how that happened.
It's a long sort of journey.
Yeah.
Of being a stunt performer for years, and and then turning into fight choreographer, and then a stunt coordinator, and then directing second unit. Mm-hmm. And then finally getting an opportunity to direct. Not many second unit directors get the chance to sort of take the mantle of first unit, and I think we had, Chad and I had great representation. Kelly McCormick, who's now my wife, actually, she was a big champion of ours as those second unit directors to like take the directing mantle, and had us out all over town looking, meeting everybody and like showing them, that we could do it. And we had an opportunity with John Wick, and then we sort of hit that out of the park, and that sort of helped. Yeah.
Absolutely. How much do you think that your experience as a stuntman kind of informs your directing or helps you when you do that?
Oh, every day.
Yeah.
Being a stuntman for so many years, you're on set, you kind of understand the logistics of how movies are made. I mean, it's like 2 decades of my life physically making movies. So as a director, I mean, I have like a knowledge of not just like the 2 movies I directed, it's like the 100 movies I've been on. Mm-hmm. And I think you can see problems arising. You can empathize with your department heads because they know that you were a department head for years, and you come from sort of the blue collar inner workings of a movie. Mm-hmm. So it's invaluable. I mean, I can't imagine not having the experience and directing. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know how that person comes into that world, and just, especially when you're dealing with a budget of like $200 million and being like, all right, here's what I want. I want that wall blue. Like, not understanding any consequences of anything.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, it's great, obviously, to have seen it from like the lower levels as well, for sure. So we wanted to quickly kick this off by going through a couple of action scenes from your films.
Yeah.
So obviously, the best place to start is Hobbs and Shaw. And my favourite scene, I think, was... it's early on, Jason Statham calls himself the champagne problem, and he uses a champagne bottle to beat the crap out of a load of guys. So I was wondering where that idea came from, and also if you could kind of give us an idea of how an action scene starts, like what's in the script,
right.
And how much do you lead on that as the director?
Well, for me, generally, the action in the movies are placeholders. The action in the script are placeholders, and then we go in and design the scenes. Mm-hmm. But the one that you're saying particularly is usually is an exception to the rule. The script was written, and the line was already in the script. I'm a bit of a champagne problem, and then it says in a couple lines, Shaw begins to beat the guys with a champagne bottle. Yeah. You couldn't give more red meat to my choreography team. They're like, oh, we're gonna do this. So the stunt guys loved it, and we embraced it, and I'm like, oh, that's fun, let's just champagne bottle. And the classic is normally it breaks. Mm-hmm. They came up with the idea that it doesn't break, like it never breaks. It's just like this sound of a hard glass hitting skulls. And it became fun. But so generally action in the script, placeholder. Mm-hmm. Myself and the stunt team come in and start to design it, and then it gets rewritten into the script.
Okay, so when you start that off with the champagne bottle, you sit down with your stunt team and you guys go, do you like map out basically how the action's going to work before with a stand-in rather than Jason Statham himself, I imagine?
Yes, you get the stunt double generally and 4 or 5 guys, and it's sort of what we do what we call stunt viz, and we start to choreograph it and then we shoot it and edit it on video like how we would see it.
Sure.
I think for years people just choreograph stuff and then passed it to the director. Obviously, I'm different that way because I've come from the action world. But you can't really separate the choreography from the way you shoot it. I mean, there's a very distinct sort of merging of the two.
Sure.
You know, so we shoot it and edit it, and then we present it, but they present it to me.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, in my head, I'm imagining it being like choreographing a dance almost, because there's like the same kind of movements and you have to get everything right. Everything has to be on the same mark, I imagine, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot like a dance. And I think when you have a great stunt team, like the fight scene really hinges on the guy doing it, like Jason, who's exceptional, but also the stunt team around him. Those are the guys that are, you know, when somebody's off a beat, you tell, like, so those guys have to be perfect, and fortunately I have the best fight guys in the business.
Absolutely. And so where did you get your team from? Like, are they people you've met along the way throughout your career and you've brought them together for that?
So generally on a movie I have core members of my team that have been working with Chad or myself for years on fights and things, and then we usually go out and find locals and things that are, you know, seasoned fight guys that are independents in the business. And so you make a team for the show, and then you guys rehearse.
Okay. And so Jason does some of those stunts himself, does he?
He does a lot of it. Like, I mean, the fight stuff, he does all of it. He's great. I mean, he's exceptional in a fight, probably one of the best actors I've ever worked with in fight scenes.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to get in a tussle with him, I don't think.
It's tough.
What is the bottle made of? I was wondering, because obviously it looks like you're really hitting them with that, you know?
Great props department. They made some rubber bottles.
Okay.
Yes, and then we also had candy glass sugar bottle, but we never used it. We used it only for the shot where you drop it.
Yes. Yeah. It's very satisfying. That
it is pretty fun. Yeah.
Okay. I think next we'll look at Atomic Blonde. And the scene that really stood out to me was when Charlize is in the apartment and she's getting attacked by loads of officers, and she, like, basically the rope becomes the centerpiece of the scene almost, because she ends up using it to lever herself to jump off of the balcony. And so I was wondering, when you have something like that, when the rope is like so important to where the scene ends, how much does everything revolve around that almost?
Well, that's really observant, actually, because that's actually how that scene was designed. I had this idea in my head of like making a counterweight descender rig, and I kept, you know, I went to the stunt guys and I'm like, I want this idea of like, she ties it around a guy, she jumps off the balcony and that guy slides, you know, and I had that whole idea. So we did reverse engineer the fight to use the hose earlier.
Okay.
And it became sort of like, oh, well then let's do some throwback Jackie Chan stuff before, like, to show that she's completely proficient. But it was sort of trying to make Lorraine Broughton's character smart, and her ability to use found objects in ways that you wouldn't think of. That was sort of the briefing that I gave the choreography team. And then this idea of the big descender gag. And so they went to school with it, and basically you get a hose and you get a bunch of guys, and you start playing around. They're like, we can do this, we can lock up the arm, we can wrap it around his neck, we can do a choke. And for years that's all I did as a choreographer. Like, I presented the tools and sort of the props and the problem of the character, and then you riff, and it's like a couple weeks you come up with a dance. And that's what you do.
Absolutely. No, it's really inventive, because the one thing I've noticed, it's really visceral, a lot of your action scenes, and I think having that rope, just the way she used it in so many different ways, it's really impressive.
I like you say visceral. I mean, I think I like things to feel like they hurt, or they're pain, or there's like, you know.
They do. I felt like I was thinking of the fight scenes in Mission Impossible Fallout last year, I was thinking about them a lot in Hobbs and Shaw, because I think they're both the two movies that I've seen recently that have had that visceral kind of thing where the punches, you can almost feel them, you know what I mean? Which I thought was really cool.
Right.
How much did Charlize do in the stunts?
She did a bunch, same. Like, I think another one of those actors who did incredible during the training. You found out she had an aptitude for it, and she was really, there 110%. And that scene in the stairwell, which a lot of people like talk about, that's all her. I mean, it's like, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And how did you then pull off the jump when she goes off the balcony with the rope? How do you do that?
So there's a stunt rig. We had scaffolding rig high above the balcony, and the stunt performer, Monique Ganderton, I think it was, she's connected to wires, and so she's jumping off with the rope, but the rope is a prop rope, and we're using the stunt rig to safety her. So she's on a different decel rig that's all wires and things. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think next we'll talk about a scene in John Wick in the hotel room where John Wick's in bed and he gets attacked.
Yes.
So can you explain the setup to this? Like why is it John Wick in bed? He seems injured. He's got a sling on basically.
Yeah, and we just wanted to at that point have a little bit of fun in John Wick. I think at the ultimate, like, we were creating this crazy underworld of assassins and the codes that they had, and like we thought it was sort of a dry, humorous moment that John would be caught in his boxers by this female assassin, and then he would have to fight her, to the death, basically. But it just became like, how do we, again, like making bold choices, and how do we be provocative, and how do we think outside the box in terms of like every conventional thing you've seen in action movies, and we're like, we haven't seen that, so let's try that.
And what's it like working with Keanu Reeves?
You've picked some great people to point out. He is exceptional. He respects the director's vision. He's a true artist, and he trains harder than anyone I've ever met. So.
Does he have any input in how the action takes place? And do the scenes change at all when you are shooting them? Like in the middle of it, basically?
Very little with Keanu in terms of like changing. I think he... but in terms of like him giving his opinions in the beginning, for sure, he's collaborative, like a lot, like all actors are.
Yeah.
And but a little bit more on like, again, the director's vision, and like he wants to service that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Do you know what's happening with? Oh, we got John Wick 4 coming out. You're still serving as executive producer. Yeah, nice. And then finally, just we want to look at Deadpool 2 as well, which is maybe, I think we're going to look at the final big action scene where Deadpool and Cable and Domino are going against Juggernaut. So I assume there's quite a bit of CGI involved here.
Yes.
And how much does that change how you shoot the scene?
Well, it was really a challenge for me because as a choreographer, I hadn't done... I'm used to choreographing with real people and real bodies. And then you have something that's like, I can't even know how tall he was, like whatever he was, like 14 feet or something like that, and then you're like, okay, how do we choreograph with this? So you're figuring out new methodologies of like getting guys on scaffolding and like trying to figure out, just so you can have a tactile choreographed session, right? But it's no different. It's just more finding sort of new methodology to figure out how to design it.
Sure.
I did have a lot of fun, the fight with Colossus and Juggernaut.
Yes.
Because that was basically, we got two stunt performers in the mocap suits.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then we created the fight, in our traditional way.
Oh, wow.
And we mocapped it, which created the animation for that fight.
Okay, because I was wondering if it was just entirely animated, but no, it was actually physically done by guys. That's cool.
The mocap was caught by the stunt team, but then the animators obviously enhance all that animation, and they take it and they make it great.
Okay, and then so this is obviously it's quite a long action sequence, and there's a few elements to it. So you've got like Domino off in the side with the she's tripping people up, or people are like falling over themselves and killing themselves essentially, and obviously there's a similar sequence. Well, just in the sense of how long long and massive, and there's so much going on in Hobbs and Shaw towards the end. When you're shooting a massive final sequence like that, how long does that take? Say for this in particular, the Deadpool scene, how many different days are you shooting that?
So that was probably 7 days of shooting.
Okay.
Yeah, and look, what you were saying, like the Domino sort of final destination, I call it, where she's like, all these random things are happening. Her luck is... that was one of those fights that was... we had choreographed it all in the gym, and we brought it to the set, and we thought it was going to work. And then on the day, we changed everything.
Oh, really?
And it was like this inspired moment of like, I really wanted this luck thing to come home. So my stunt team was there, and we choreographed it as we shot it. But in those big, elaborate fight scenes with multiple characters, it's good to have people in different places at times, because editorially it allows you to condense. When everyone's connected in the same shot all the time, it's hard to like cut it, you know? Yeah. So I've learned over the years that it's good to make sure that there are multiple vignettes going on, so you can reduce the size of it. But 7 days for an end set piece is not long.
Really?
Those can be as long as 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, coming back to Hobbs and Shaw then, say that the sequence in Sumo is incredible, and that bit when you've got the cars kind of going over the edge of the cliff, that kind of thing. I mean, how long does that take, and also how did you pull that off? Was that literally, did you actually have that happening, or is that CGI?
There's a combination of special effects, practical stunts, and a lot of CGI when the cars are hooked up.
Okay.
But in every shot, there's a physical element.
Yeah.
So if it's one or two cars and one car's on a gimbal and then the rest are CG, or if it's the helicopter's real and the main car's real, but the chain is connected in CG.
Yeah.
But all the lead ups and the crashes and all of that is practical. I mean, so that sequence alone was 10 days.
Okay.
Photography.
Yeah, that's long.
It's long. It's a long time. That includes the fight, the ancient weapons fight, into the cars, all the way going over the cliff.
I love that element, actually, the ancient weapons, that really brought it to it. I don't know. I like those kind of really physical battles where you can really see the hits.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. I was wondering if you thought that there are any particular misconceptions people have about stunts in films, or things that you would like people to understand about how it works, if you know what I mean.
There's a big misconception that the stunt business is filled with daredevils and crazy guys, but really it's a science, it's really like physics, really. I mean, the gags that we put together are driven by, physics and like what can be done and science and so it's not as like crazy daredevil-y as they think. I mean, it feels daunting at times, but it's really about the math and the science that allow these things to happen. It's not unlike magic. And you have a lot of really smart, intelligent filmmakers that's in the stunt world that are making those gags happen. Yeah. And then physically talented performers, I think that, again, it's not just daredevils. Like the fight team that I talked about earlier on, those guys are all high-level athletes that are at the top of their game, and they come from the gymnastics world or the martial arts world, and they're performing athletic feats. And I think that's people need to know that they should be recognized.
For sure. How did you get into it in the first place?
I got in. I was a martial artist, and that's how I came into the business. It was a sort of Buffy the Vampire Slayer was one of the first shows that I worked on, and there was a sort of a need for martial art fight guys at that time, and there was starting to be this push to have more Hong Kong style fights in movies and television at that time, and they were looking for talented martial art people, and I found my niche.
Okay, and so on Buffy, were you a stunt double? So were you standing in for someone like Dave Boreanaz?
I was a stunt performer. I doubled the guy with the white hair.
Spike.
Spike.
Yes.
I doubled Spike quite a bit, but mostly I played Creature of the Week, like a lot of prosthetic makeup.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you were on camera a lot then?
A lot,
just in makeup. Okay, that's very exciting. How much do you think stunts have come along in the last 20 years since you started your career? Obviously, there's been a lot more CGI involved, I imagine, but you probably
The merging of CGI and stunts have made it more technical. And I think that the stunt performers and coordinators that have survived have embraced CGI and embraced the new technology.
Yeah.
You know, so it has changed quite a bit. You know, it started out when I started in the business, there was a lot of wires and rigging. You know, we had this new technology to erase all the wires, and so it became like really great that we could have big high falls out of buildings, but you're attached to wires as opposed to putting in the airbag and framing the bag out and like doing it in cuts. You could do things that you couldn't do before because you had the ability to roto the wires out, which is CGI.
Sure.
So it's this constant evolution, and I think it really has changed quite a bit. It's become very specialized.
Okay.
You know, my fight guys are my fight guys. My stunt riggers are my stunt riggers. My car guys are my car guys, and they're because it's almost impossible to be proficient at the level you need to be in all of the disciplines, where it used to be in the cowboy days, everyone was just good at everything and, had a lot of guts, and that was it.
Okay.
Mouth guard, cup, hit the accelerator. And it's not like that anymore. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was Hobbs and Shaw director David Leitch. Hobbs and Shaw is out in cinemas now. Head over to radiotimes.com for your full fix of Hobbs and Shaw content, including more from Leitch on the surprising post-credits scene, the cameos, and the possibility of multiple sequels. Thank you for listening.